It started with one ride. My husband's coworker, a rainy afternoon, and a text that changed everything. If you're married, you need to hear this before it happens to you. Stay till the end. One choice almost ruined my entire life. Subscribe for real-life stories you'll never forget. They say wisdom comes with age. And at 60, you think you've seen most of what life has to offer. The good, the bad, the in-between. I'm a mother of 3, a grandmother of 5, and I've been married to the same man, Arthur, for 38 years. Ours was never a perfect marriage, but it was solid. Reliable. Familiar. The kind of life you settle into like an old, well-worn sweater. But sometimes, familiarity can feel like invisibility. And in those silent spaces between daily chores and unspoken thoughts, something unexpected can sneak in. That's exactly what happened to me. And I never thought it would start with something as innocent as accepting a ride. This isn't a story I'm proud of. In fact, I've carried it with a great deal of guilt and shame. But I've come to realize that hiding a mistake doesn't erase it. Sharing it might just stop someone else from making the same one. Let me take you back to a rainy Tuesday afternoon, the kind where nothing seems to go your way. My car had broken down earlier that week. Arthur had taken it to the service shop, and I'd planned to take a cab back home after my doctor's appointment. That day, I waited outside the clinic, holding my umbrella in one hand and my prescription bag in the other. It was cold, damp, and the cab I ordered was nowhere to be found. That's when a silver sedan pulled up next to the sidewalk, and I heard a voice I recognized. "Need a ride, ma'am?" I turned. It was Mark, my husband's coworker. Now, Mark wasn't a stranger. I'd met him several times over the years. He was around 45, well-groomed, always the kind to make eye contact and smile genuinely. Arthur often mentioned him as one of the young but smart guys in the finance team. He'd been to our house a couple of times during Christmas gatherings. So when he offered me a ride, I didn't hesitate. It seemed kind, convenient, normal. I smiled. "Only if you don't mind driving an old lady through traffic." He laughed. "Are you kidding? You're more elegant than half the people I drive." A simple joke. A small compliment. I didn't think much of it then. I opened the door, slid into the front seat, and thanked him. I had no idea that moment, so small, so seemingly harmless, would soon spiral into something I'd come to regret. The thing is, when you've lived a long life, you tend to trust what you've seen. And what I had seen of Mark was all good. Helpful. Polite. I didn't know that underneath that professional smile was something else. Something, waiting. Something I wasn't prepared for. I wish I could say I saw it coming. I wish I could say I said no. But the truth is, I didn't. And that's why I'm here, telling this story. Because sometimes, danger doesn't knock on your door. It offers you a ride in the rain. I buckled my seatbelt as Mark merged into traffic. Rain tapped lightly on the windshield, and the air in the car smelled faintly of peppermint. Probably from one of those little air fresheners clipped to the vent. I settled in, silently grateful to be out of the cold and away from the wet pavement. Mark made small talk at first. "So how was your appointment?" he asked, glancing over with one hand on the steering wheel. "Oh, the usual," I said. "A few more pills, a few more warnings to take it easy. Doctors love to remind me that I'm 60 going on 70. He chuckled. "Honestly, you don't look a day over 50. "I mean that." I gave a polite laugh. I wasn't sure how to respond. Compliments at my age are rare, but coming from a man 15 years younger, and my husband's coworker at that, it felt misplaced. Still, I brushed it off. He was probably just trying to be kind. Or maybe he had that natural charm some men have. You know the type. The ones who compliment waitresses and hold open doors with a little too much eye contact. The ride continued, and so did the conversation. He asked about my kids, about retirement plans, even what I did to keep myself looking so well maintained. That word, maintained, I remember it stuck in my head like a splinter. I wasn't a classic car or a prized antique. I was a woman, a wife, a grandmother. But again, I smiled, gave a generic answer about walking in the mornings and drinking less coffee. That's when he said it. I mean it, you know. You've got a presence. Like, when you walk into a room, people notice. I turned to look at him, trying to read the intention behind his words. Was he flirting? Was this just innocent conversation taken the wrong way? I think you're overestimating me, Mark, I said gently. He smiled, eyes still on the road. Maybe, or maybe I'm just the first one who's noticed. That made me uncomfortable. My hands rested on my purse in my lap, fingers gripping the fabric a little tighter. I stared out the window, watching the rain blur the outlines of buildings and stop signs. He didn't say anything for a while after that. The silence in the car became loud, heavy. Then, just as we were turning onto my street, he slowed the car but didn't pull into my driveway. Instead, he parked a few houses down and put the car in park. You know, he said, voice softer now, Arthur's lucky. But if I'm being honest, I've thought about you. For a while, my heart skipped. Not in the romantic way. The way it does when you're 16 and someone holds your hand. This was different. It felt like a breach. I shifted in my seat. Mark, you're crossing a line. He leaned slightly toward me. Not close, but close enough that I felt cornered. I don't mean to offend you, he said quickly. I thought maybe you felt it too. No, I said firmly. I didn't. And I don't. I reached for the door handle. Thank you for the ride. I stepped out, my legs shaking slightly, even though I walked calmly toward my front door. Once I got inside and shut the door behind me, I leaned against it and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. That was the moment I knew, something that had started as innocent had turned into something else entirely. Something I had to figure out how to stop, before it went any further. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to Arthur, listening to the soft rise and fall of his breathing, staring at the ceiling. My body was still, but my mind was a storm. I kept replaying the ride with Mark, his words, the way he parked a few houses away, that lingering look, and most of all, the way he said, I thought maybe you felt it too. It haunted me. No, Mark hadn't touched me. He hadn't said anything overtly threatening. But that's what made it worse. What he did was subtle, gray, wrapped in plausible deniability. It made me question myself. Was I overreacting? Was I reading into something that wasn't there? Or was I doing what so many women my age have been taught to do, minimize the discomfort? The next morning, I pushed the thoughts aside and tried to carry on like normal. I made Arthur his toast, put on the kettle, folded the laundry, fed the cat. But then, around 11 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark. I'm sorry if I made things weird yesterday. I just can't stop thinking about how good it felt to talk to you. You're not like most women. You listen. You look right through people. I meant every word. I stood still in the kitchen, the text glowing on my phone screen. A part of me expected it. The other part? I think I was hoping maybe I had imagined everything. And then, less than a minute later, another message came in. Maybe we can talk again sometime. Just you and me. I'd love that. This time, no attempt at being vague. No reference to Arthur. Just a clear invitation. I felt cold all over. Not fear, exactly, but a kind of emotional sickness. A nausea that comes when someone crosses a boundary you didn't think you had to explain. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My fingers hovered over the screen, and for a moment, I hesitated. And here's the part I'm not proud of. I didn't delete the message. I didn't block him right away. Instead, I stared at it. Somewhere deep inside, something stirred. Something I didn't want to admit. Because the truth is, when you've spent years being a mother, a wife, a caregiver, you start to feel invisible. Mark saw me, or at least, he made me feel like I was seen. And that's how temptation works. It doesn't always walk in wearing red and flashing neon lights. Sometimes, it whispers softly and pretends to understand you. I spent the rest of the day avoiding my phone. Every buzz made my stomach twist. By evening, I had convinced myself I needed to tell someone. Not a friend, not a daughter. I needed to tell Arthur. He deserved to know. But the words wouldn't come. How do you explain to your husband that his younger coworker texted you something borderline inappropriate? How do you say, I didn't ask for this, but I didn't shut it down fast enough either? So I stayed silent. But that night, I moved my phone across the room before going to bed. It felt like a small act of resistance. A way of telling myself, this has to stop. But unfortunately, Mark wasn't done. And the line he had crossed? He was about to step much, much further. 2 days passed. I avoided Mark's messages. I didn't respond, didn't open them, didn't delete them either. It was like a wound I couldn't stop checking, even if I knew it would hurt. Arthur didn't notice anything unusual. He'd been busy preparing for a regional finance review. Late hours, long phone calls, and I just went through the motions. Smiling where I was supposed to smile. Folding laundry like it would somehow fold my guilt away. Then, on a quiet Thursday afternoon, everything changed. I was sitting on the couch, cup of lukewarm tea in hand, when my phone buzzed again. Mark. I miss that moment in the car. You looked at me like you wanted to say something. I wish you had. I stared at it, sighing through my nose. Enough, I thought. But before I could even process what to do next, another message arrived. An image. I didn't want to open it. But I did. And there it was. A mirror selfie. Mark. Shirtless. Not pornographic. No, he was too clever for that. Just suggestive. Intentional. His expression smug, like he knew exactly what he was doing. I dropped the phone on the coffee table like it burned me. I stared at it, horrified. That was the moment the line didn't just blur, it shattered. This wasn't flirtation. This wasn't subtle anymore. This was calculated, creeping, controlled, and suddenly I felt violated. It's hard to describe what happens in moments like that. It's not rage, not at first. It's shame. Shame that you didn't stop it sooner. Shame that you were pulled in. Even slightly. Shame that now, it's not just about you anymore. It's about your husband. Arthur. The man who'd built a life with me. The man who never once gave me a reason to doubt his loyalty. And here I was, sitting with a message from his coworker that could destroy everything. I picked up my phone again, hands trembling slightly. My instinct? Delete it all. Pretend it never happened. But something stronger spoke louder. No. This ends here. So I took screenshots. Every message. Every image. I created a folder and locked it. And then I sat there, for nearly 20 minutes. Thinking. Breathing. Fighting the urge to cry. I wasn't a child. I wasn't some young girl naive about the world. I was a grown woman. But what I'd forgotten is that no one is immune to being targeted. Manipulation doesn't care how old or wise you are. It only needs your silence. I decided right then, I wouldn't be silent. I owed it to myself. And I owed it to Arthur. He deserved the truth, even if it was uncomfortable. Even if it hurt. Because sometimes, the only way to protect your peace is to open the wound, let it breathe, and let the light in. What Mark had done was wrong. But what I did next would define whether I carried this as a secret burden or faced it head on, with honesty. I chose honesty. That evening, I planned to tell Arthur everything. Not just the photo, the ride, the coffee, my hesitations, even my silence. Because no marriage survives on love alone. It survives on truth. And the time had come to tell mine. Dinner was already on the stove when Arthur came home that evening. He looked tired. The kind of tired that settles in a man's bones after decades of doing the right thing. Showing up, providing. He kissed my cheek, hung up his coat, and smiled. That smile, the one I had seen for nearly 40 years, suddenly felt too kind. Too pure. I didn't feel worthy of it. We ate in near silence. I watched him chew, sip his water, glance at the news playing on the muted television. Every time I opened my mouth to speak, something inside me held it back. But I couldn't delay forever. After dinner, while we were both loading the dishwasher, I said softly, "Arthur, I need to talk to you." He paused, looked at me. "Everything okay?" "No," I whispered. "Not really." He dried his hands on a towel and leaned against the counter. His eyes met mine. "Go ahead." I took a deep breath, the kind that feels like it's dragging your whole chest up with it. My fingers trembled slightly as I reached for my phone. "I've been keeping something from you. And I hate myself for it. But I can't keep it in any longer." I unlocked my phone, pulled up the screenshots, and handed it to him. He took it slowly, like he already sensed this was no small thing. I watched his face shift as he scrolled, at first confused, then tense. His brows furrowed, jaw tightened, but he didn't speak until he'd read every word and seen every image. He set the phone down on the kitchen counter, looked at me, his eyes hard, but not cruel. "What is this?" he asked quietly. I swallowed. It started with a ride home. From Mark. His mouth twitched. "Mark? From my office?" I nodded. My car was in the shop. It was raining. He offered. I accepted. "Then what?" His voice was calm, but the undertone was like steel wire pulled taut. I told him everything. The small talk, the compliments that made me uneasy. The coffee detour. The messages. My silence. My hesitation. The shame I felt, the confusion. How I didn't encourage him, but I didn't shut it down soon enough either. Arthur said nothing for a long time. The silence between us felt like a canyon. I couldn't look at him. I stared down at my hands, clenched in my lap. Then finally, he spoke. "I'm not angry at you." That shocked me more than anything. "I'm angry at him," he continued. "He took advantage of a vulnerable moment. But I'm also angry that you didn't tell me earlier." I nodded, tears now stinging the corners of my eyes. "I didn't know how. I didn't want to hurt you. And part of me was ashamed that I didn't shut it down immediately." He looked at me then, not with fury, not even disappointment, but with something deeper. Sadness. A kind of quiet heartbreak. "I wish you'd come to me first," he said. "Not with the screenshots. But when you first started feeling unseen. That made me cry. Because that's exactly what it was. I had felt invisible. And I hadn't even realized how much until someone like Mark made me feel otherwise." Arthur pulled out a chair and sat across from me. "We're not perfect," he said. "But we're not broken. Not unless we stop talking." We sat for a long time. No shouting. No storm. Just two people, older and wearier than before, staring at the truth between them. That night, we didn't solve everything. But we began again, with honesty. And that was the beginning of healing. The morning after I told Arthur everything, the world looked different. Not because the sun shone brighter or because I felt instantly forgiven. But because I had finally let go of a secret that had been eating me from the inside out. Secrets have a weight, even the ones we justify. Even the ones that started with, "It was just coffee," or, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." They settle deep in your bones and make everything feel heavier, your smile, your voice, even your steps. Now, that weight was gone, and in its place was something else, consequence, but also clarity. Arthur didn't speak much that morning. He kissed my forehead before heading out to work, but there was a silence in him. Not angry, not cold. Just processing. I spent that day cleaning the house not because it was messy, but because it gave my hands something to do while my heart sat still. Then, around 3 p.m., my phone buzzed again. "Mark, I've been waiting to hear from you. Are you okay?" That one message nearly made me scream. The audacity. I didn't hesitate this time. I blocked his number. Then I drafted one final email, professional, short, and direct. "Do not contact me again in any form. I have spoken to Arthur and I've kept record of every message you've sent. Let this be the end of it." I hit send. I didn't feel empowered. I didn't feel strong. I felt sad. Because that's the part no one talks about when they tell you to cut toxic people out of your life. They don't talk about the way you grieve. Not for the person, but for the illusion, the attention, the comfort, the temporary escape. Even if it was wrong, it had felt like something in a moment of nothingness. And now it was gone. Arthur came home that night a little earlier than usual. He asked if we could sit outside for a while. We sat on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the trees. He turned to me and said, "I talked to HR today. Told them about Mark. I didn't give every detail, but enough. They're going to look into it." I nodded. "Are you okay?" He paused. "I'm hurt. But I'm not leaving. You told me the truth. That means more than you think." We sat in silence for a while. Then he added, "Let's start over. Not because we have to. Because we want to." And that was everything. We began going to counseling together. We started walking every morning. Talking more. Laughing again. It wasn't easy, but healing never is. Months later, I shared a piece of this story with my daughter. She cried. Not because she was disappointed, but because she said, "Mom, most women wouldn't have told the truth. You did." That stuck with me. Because in the end, this story isn't about temptation or betrayal or even marriage. It's about what happens when you're honest with yourself. When you stop pretending that just because you're older, you're immune to being noticed, flattered, or fooled. I made a mistake, but I owned it, and that changed everything. So if you're listening to this and you're holding something in, something you've justified, something you think no one will understand, let me be the one to tell you. You are not alone. You are not a villain for feeling lonely. And it's never too late to do the right thing. Even at 60. Especially at 60. Thank you for listening to my story. Sometimes, life puts us in situations we never expect, moments that test our strength and our truth. If there's one thing I hope you take away, it's this. No matter your age or circumstance, honesty is the foundation of healing. If you've ever faced something similar, please share your thoughts or story in the comments below. Your voice matters. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories that inspire and caution. Stay safe, stay strong, and until next time, take care of yourself.